measures and make sure that our safety nets are taken consideration in regards to COVID-19 so that all the pupils and the learners begins from a relatively, of course we cannot have an equal, but then a relatively equal playing field for education system.
So that at least they can compete among themselves.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Mr. Sasia as far as education is concerned with this corona pandemic.
Thank you very much. But for me, it is a choice between the health of the nation and the wealth of the nation. Those who are fighting for the education to come back or for the students to go back to school, I think they're just being blind to the fact that coronavirus is a serious pandemic. It is not in Kenya alone that schools have closed. Worldwide, go to the United States and even other countries. Schools have closed, not because somebody wanted them to close, but because we have a scenario in which we want to keep our children safe at home. So for me, I look at it differently. Education, the main purpose of education is to achieve knowledge. It is not really the curriculum. But we've turned our education to mean exams and the curriculum. So we really want our children to be in school for a certain period, not disregarding the fact that they are supposed to have the knowledge. So for me, I look at it and say that even if this pandemic goes for a future that we are not able to think about, but then when it is over, we can resume from where we stopped. Because all we want is our students to have the knowledge, not to have gone through the curriculum. We are not fighting the 365 days that we call a year. We are fighting the knowledge. We want at the end of the system that when we do have complete access, assessment of the students, we are able to tell that they have achieved the purpose of education, not the purpose of time. But most of us are looking at this thing depending on time, that we forecast we are going to have exams in October. Now the pandemic has eaten 3 months of our time. We are forcing exams to come on October. But we've had a situation in this country where teachers have gone on strike, let's say even for 3 months. But to exams, we've pushed them forward. Or rather, we've come up with modalities on how to cover what was lost. So for me, I think the stakeholders, both the government, the Ministry of Education, the parents, and even the students, they should come together and think of a way in which they can compensate for the lost time. But again, there's the discussion of those students at home are getting knowledge through the online means of learning. That is a complete hogwash. We understand, first in this country, the access to internet. Even those who live in the capital city, those who live in the cities in Kenya, still the access to internet is a problem. First, the accessibility, the speed, and the cost of the internet in this country. You cannot tell a parent who has 3 children in the house to buy internet that goes at around 100 shillings daily for his kids rather than buy unga for them to eat. There are those students who have been displaced by the floods who do not even have a place to call home. You are telling that parent that your student can learn online. Come on, they don't even understand what is online. They don't even understand what is internet. Their phones were swept away. They have those small phones that we call kabambe. So let us look at the education aspect as a system to gain knowledge, but not really a system to fight time. This 1 year per class, was it a scientific study somebody who came up with that idea? So we can change the education curriculum and timing and extend it and even have exams in January. There's no problem with that.
So according to Mr. Sasia, let us fight the pandemic first. Then once you overcome it, that's when we can look into education matters.
Yes, for me, we should prioritize the health of our nation. Because even if we force our students to go back to school, then let's say we have a new wave of the virus maybe in schools. And you understand also the congestion in our schools. You cannot tell our children that they can go to school and have social distancing. You cannot tell them that they can go to school and have masks. The government once promised that they'll be buying books for students. It has been a problem. So even if we talk of masks, I still think the government will not provide masks and those other things. So let us keep our children safe at home. Once we are through in this pandemic thing, or once we are able to contain it, then we can resume education.
Mr. Orogo, briefly, do you say that let's focus on the health, as Mr. Sasi is saying, and then once we are done with the calamities and the pandemics, we now go back to education, or we run them concurrently?
Well, I think the handling of COVID-19 has been put to question over a number of times. And it's either fortunate or unfortunate that even some segment of Kenyans still don't believe that, you know, this thing is with us, you know, and they think that it's just maybe some media and some government calculation somewhere bringing it to these figures. I also want to put in the fact that let us be aware that we are enrolling a new curriculum, right? And all we are putting into consideration that we should not, like he said, we should not be looking to it in terms of rolling a curriculum, but then how then do we make our system where there is a knowledge base? That is why it's called competency based. Not really in terms of trying to catch up with them, but then how would learners take advantage to holistically, you know, bring up themselves. But the question is, even countries that have been worstly hit, my brother right now, are embarking on measures, you know, to you know, an exit measure for COVID-19, even though they are still having some cautionary, you know, measures, but they already have a plan spelled out how they would make the institutions recover, including the education institutions. So I think it's for us to begin to learn from them, and because at the end of the day, we have a curriculum that is it's quite new, and for it to you know, to be mature and for it to have a stabilization, something needs to be going on. My argument is the fact that we still have a problem with the mines connection electricity. We have a problem on knowledge based how to work with those gadgets. That is true. But then we have an opportunity and a mandate, responsibility to make sure that our learning institutions do not get shut for a long time in the suspect that we are waiting. Nobody knows when the virus is gonna, you know, we are going to relax these measures. But it's important to have the measures of an exit strategy, including resuming back our educational system and all other systems.
Through whichever modes.
Yeah.
Many thanks, guys. The ministry, the stakeholders, and even the parents and every other person outside there have had your input, because all of us have to come together and see how solutions can be found. Now, straight away, we go to our tonight's topic. And just a disclaimer, whatever is being discussed here is not the position of CAC TV, but it is personal opinions on what someone thinks about this particular topic that we're going to handle. Continue watching Power Brief on CAC TV. Now, guys, there is this referendum question, and right now we are having the bill having been gazetted in the Kenya Gazette. Now, does a country require a referendum?
From where I see it, I think a referendum process is not a problem to any country, because a constitutional making process is a continuous process. No country has a constitution that you can say it is complete. So whichever the case, the discussion around us having a referendum is not anything to cause any worry. But for me, I'm looking at it at a different perspective. That what is it that we want to change in the constitution?
We are coming there. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Daniel Orogo,
Yeah.
do we require referendum as at now?
My personal opinion is that there is no need for a referendum right now, for the fact that there is other issues that the proposed referendum, you know, the purported referendum really address that are already in the foundational documents that we have.
We'll get there.
Right.
What was your foundation or your argument?
My argument first was looking at the 2010 constitution. We had the no and yes teams that discussed the 2010 constitution. And you remember very well those proponents of the yes on the 2010 constitution were saying that let us pass this document. Then after we've passed it, we are going to have changes on it. We know it has some problems, but we'll pass it and then have changes, because 80% of it was okay. But they were arguing about 20% that they thought was not right. The other side thought, and unfortunately, the side that thought the constitution, the 2010 constitution was not right, are the guys who have been the government now implementing the same constitution. But some of them now believe that we need to do some changes in the constitution. But for me, I think if we have really to look at what are we proposing to change the constitution,
Exactly.
it is so much valid for me to change the constitution if the proposals are so valid and are things that all of us can agree. Not even if all of us, but majority of us can agree that we need to change the constitution for this and this to happen. So there's no problem on my side for us having a referendum.
Now, Mr. Orogo had a contrary opinion, and there was something he was saying as far as this referendum is regarding it. Now, why are you not for the referendum idea as at now?
Well, I believe that one of the constitution we have is progressive, and since it's a progressive constitution and the one that we have been proud of as one of the best constitution we ever have, and I've heard these from different experts. But I've also have my own personal opinion why I think we have a very progressive constitution that addresses. The problem that we have is we have never hold to task our political class to make sure that the dictates, the spirit and the letter of the constitution that as currently we have is adhered to. What does that speaks about us as a country and as voters? It simply say that we are living in a political governance system where our founding documents are not important if the politicians doesn't think they're important. All these suggestions that have been put on board, reading through, and when you're reading, you are giving us, we are having a preliminary, you talked about different proposals, but I also want to take you behind to the Punguza Mzigo. It's one that was brought forward, and if you read through it, it had more explanations than the ones that we are purporting to be amending right now. So for me, it is from 2010. I think it's around 10 years after the Constitution, and I think that most of the institutions, most of the dictates, most of the processes have been mutilated and have not been adhered to. So what makes us think that by purporting to change it to make it better would make it better? Lastly on this, the proponents of change constitution in different political wings and different political, those beating drums about the change of the constitution, and I agree with what he said to some extent, had actually, cast their doubt on the old constitution that we had. They said, if you, and I quote the Honorable, the former Prime Minister, said that if you look keenly at that old constitution, it had been ratified so many times that even if it looked like a cloth, it could always be torn. That is exactly what we are beginning to do with the current constitution. And I'm not saying that it's really, but then in what context are we proposing that change constitution would work better for us right now?
We'll get there. Now, Mr. Sasia, we want to establish a foundation for our topic tonight because there are two things here on the table. That is Cheptumo, the chairman of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee in Parliament, and we have Jeremiah Kioni, who is actually the chair of Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee. These two people want this referendum to happen. But in law, it is said that if there's no procedure, there is no law. Once you flout the procedure, then the law will be flaunted at the end of the journey. So these two people have got different ways on how they want this thing to appear. And let's actually go through it one by one. First, Jeremiah Kioni, on the date of the referendum, he says that let it be held alongside the general election that is in 2022. That is it. But when it comes to Cheptumo talks of 90 days. 90 days after presidential proclamation. If the president proclaims it tonight, then after 90 days, let's have the referendum. That is according to Cheptumo. When we come to the framing of the question, where you are trying to take us there, though prematurely, framing of the question, what is it? Should people walk without shoes, or what is it? Framing the question. Kioni talks of 14 days, Cheptumo 21 days, a range of 7 days, which we don't know what is informing these changes. Now we go down petition. That Sasia is dissatisfied, or Orogo is dissatisfied with how the process has been handled. Kioni talks of 21 days for someone to go and petition. Then we have Cheptumo talking of 28 days, another difference of 7 days. Then there is something here now where Punguza Mzigo ilikutana na mlima somewhere, the county referendums. Cheptumo spoke about it, that after it has gone to the national level, the counties also have to sit down and agree that we are going for this thing. But Kioni hasn't mentioned on his bill. Let's go to the results, declarations. Kioni talks of 48 hours, and then Cheptumo talks of 7 days. Now, your views as per the two bills. Are these people keen to achieve the same thing, or there is something in between them? Beginning with Sasia.
If you look at the Kioni bill and the Cheptumo bill, you realize that politics is playing part, because the two guys are kind of competing. Whatever this guy is saying, the other one is opposing. And looking at Cheptumo bill, Cheptumo is the chairperson of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, which is purely mandated to have been produced the bill way before, even before this discourse. But now Cheptumo has been sitting on the bill, I don't know for political reasons or what, around a year and plus. Now he comes and hears that Kioni has brought a bill. Cheptumo now resurfaces with another bill. Comparing the two bills, you realize that it looks to me that Cheptumo took the Kioni bill, and when he was drafting he was drafting with Cheptumo, with the Kioni bill at hand. Because everything Kioni says, Cheptumo says the opposite. Like the 14 and 21 days, the 21 and 28 days. Why have a 7 days difference? Now, you look at Cheptumo bill, he seems not really coming to reality with what the country is going through. You cannot propose to have a constitutional referendum separately with the general election within 2 years, because the cost of holding a referendum is too high. I would go for the one that runs concurrently with the general election. But the whole discussion, looking at it, you see politics at play. Remember, Cheptumo is a close ally to the Deputy President William Ruto. And you look at Kioni, is an ally or is a member of the Kieleweke faction of the Jubilee government. So you see politics playing part. You don't see some kind of genuineness in them. And you've seen also people like Mbadi, the minority whip, commenting on the same, saying that Kioni bill had delayed and now is coming to compete. Not Kioni, sorry. Cheptumo bill delayed and now it is coming to compete the Kioni bill. You see such people commenting and you realize this is politics. And they seem not so much genuine on the referendum, but so much concentrating on the political affairs to settle the Jubilee and the two factions of Jubilee and opposition, whatever fracas. So look at the whole thing. I think our politicians are not just fair enough. Our politicians are not genuine. They should have brought this thing as one. They can sit together and discuss and bring us one bill. But that all said, the House Committee, the House Business Committee is the one to decide which bill will come to the House. So we are all looking at that committee to at least do some justice to the citizens and spare us those drama and whatever Jubilee and opposition dramas, and let us have a serious discourse. Let us have a discourse that is purely based to help the common mwananchi and not the political class.
Let's hear from Mr. Orogo. Why two people holding these constitutional legal committees coming up with different approaches just to achieve the same thing? What are you reading from with a third eye?
One is the supremacy of which committee reigns supreme when it comes to guiding the constitutional process. That is what is happening between them. JLAC, the fact that it has a justice connotation, legal affair in it, would want to reign supreme and say that matters of legal issues that finds its way in the National Assembly and the country must pass through this process. Kioni's committee, also on the Constitution and Oversight Committee, would also want to show, their political chest that, there's everything that comes with the ratification of constitutional must pass through this committee. But then it's also like he's mentioned, I think the whole hilabaloo is just trying to have a concoction about the days and concord it to appear to be working and being relevant in the whole discourse about the constitutional change. And I would look it into the lens of who plays in the gallery behind, who has an upper hand that we never see directing these committees. because that then requires, we speak in the context of what we are discussing, is that there is a big hand that plays behind these committees. You know, it doesn't just happen like that. You are aware that a parliamentary committee is a quasi-judicial committee. It means that it has the power like that of the court to direct how things happen. And that is how some of them summon other people. So the functioning and performance of these committees must be read within the semi-autonomy that they have in their decision. Now, coming back to the discussion about how we go about it, you know, ideally, we would propose that a sixth question be put into a ballot. You know, ideally, Kenyans would really want that to happen, because my thinking is that now that with the adverse effects of COVID, we wouldn't imagine, you know, having some finances running into billions, again directed for a referendum. Unfortunately and realistically, this is what is going to happen. And I would like to assure you, and we would want to come back to this panel again. You see, these two proposals are not going to find their way. The proposal that is going to find their way in the National Assembly is BBI. And these two committees are going to be asked to tailor their proposal based on the Building Bridges Initiative bill that finds its way in the discussion of the House. So suffice to say that at the end of the day, it's all about, like my brothers mentioned, who is pulling the strings when it comes to, you know, upsetting and directing the whole functioning. But remember, there is a catch in that the country relies on the Election Act. We still don't have a referendum bill or a referendum act. So the purpose is either way what the system or what the political system is going to decide is they're going to question in the proposal by these two committees, and they're going to mutilate the function, because they're going to tell you there is no referendum bill to guide your proposals. Wait until we have a referendum bill to have a proposal, and then we factor in the BBI and ask all the committees to channel their proposals in the Building Bridges Initiative. Remember also that we do not have a functioning IEBC that takes, you know, is spearheading the referendum. Right now, you saw what happened yesterday. The results that were posted in their portal has been contested and has been removed. And I'm telling you that the next purge is going to happen within the members of the IEBC.
We shall look into IBC in our second part of the show. Okay. Now, it seems the two of you are concurring. Let there be the sixth question in the 2022 polls.
Well, I have not really say. I have said that is my ideal. That is my thing.
He also brought up such
but I think realistically,
yes,
politically, legalese, that is going to be overtaken by events.
Okay, many thanks. Gentlemen, we are going for a short commercial break. We will be coming back in a short while to focus on this matter. What is the likeliest question to be framed over this matter of the referendum? And how further can it take this country, as the country is only 2 years away from the general election, and not only a general election, but a succession politics, because President Uhuru Kenyatta constitutionally is to retire in the year 2022. Keep it on CAC TV. Remember, this debate is also live on our Facebook page, that is CAC TV Kenya. You can also engage us on our YouTube, that is CAC TV Kenya, and our Twitter handle is CAC TV_Kenya. Keep it on CAC TV. Are you looking to grow a business? CAC TV offers you a variety of advertising opportunities to suit your budget. Advertise with us today and reach your potential customers countrywide. For more information, email us on sales@cactv.org or call 0794 588 054. Many thanks for keeping it on CAC TV on Power Brief. We are discussing the referendum bells. Bills have been taken to Parliament, and there are two bills happening right now. We are looking into this matter from our experts who are here with us tonight to see what is to be done and where can this referendum lead Kenya towards as we head to the 2022 general elections. Gentlemen, before we went for the break, we were looking into the question. What is this question that people want it to be framed? Or what is it that you believe has to be included so that the referendum to take place in Kenya?
You see, the framing of the question purely depends on the experts, either from the commission or those who the committee, the relevant committee. Mm-hmm. But you realize in most cases and in most referendums, the question does not really capture what is in the referendum. Mm-hmm. The question is structured in a way that whoever is going, the voter will just go and tick yes or no. Mm-hmm. But whatever contains the content is the document, which unfortunately the voter never reads. The voter waits for the politician to come and tell him, just vote yes or just vote no. Mm-hmm. So, to me, I would not so much look into the question, but I would want, even if you're going to have a referendum, we need to have this discourse whereby people are educated, people are made to read. It is read in sections, so that when I'm going to vote as per my opinion, but not as an opinion of my demigod or my political father. Mm-hmm. Most of us will just go to vote because a person A has said the constitution, the referendum is okay, and others will vote no because person B has said it is not right. Mm-hmm. And in most cases, politicians will settle their political differences in a referendum. Mm-hmm. He will come to tell you to vote no simply because he maybe doesn't agree with those who are going for the constitution. So for me, I look at it not in the terms of the question, but I look at it in the terms of the entire document. We should make it so much Mwananchi based, even if possible translate it to the local dialects, so that the voter can read and understand. The voter can make a decision. And that period that is given for campaigns, either for or against the referendum, it should be guided. We should have a committee or a commission that should be put in place to purely guide the people on the neutral education of what is really contained in the document. But if we leave it to the politicians, in most cases, the voter will always make a wrong decision. He will vote the decision of the political demigod, mm-hmm. but not their own personal decision.
Mm-hmm. But in summary, what are some of these few areas that you think is going to inform this referendum? Is it the structure of government? Is it the number of years when elections are to be held? Is it the number of members of parliament, number of governors, doing away with some seats? What are your feelings or what are you hearing from behind the scenes?
Definitely it is the structure of the government. We've looked at it when politicians are talking about the winner takes it all, of which I've always been against that aspect where the second runners up goes home with nothing, yet the winner becomes the president for that sake. But you realize our politicians are looking at it as on a personal ground, not progressive. They are looking at it that in 2022 elections, I might come the second. What am I going to be? Mm-hmm. But if we were serious about the entire discussion, we need to put it, the structure of the government should encompass all the competitors. It should have all the ideas, those who lost and those who won. Mm-hmm. And for me, I would want to say that the referendum is purely based on the structure, and women have managed to sneak in the agenda. And you'll see most women going for the yes if the BBI document is coming, because they are looking at the women part of it. And I've been challenging youth where I'm seated. We need not to say no or yes, but we need to sneak in our agenda, so that even if it goes yes, if yes wins, our agenda is in the document. Mm-hmm. But most of us will always go for the politicians, then forgetting what belongs to us. And then after the discourse is when we now come and say youth have been neglected. Mm-hmm. Yet it is now that we need to inject our thoughts in the document. So first it should be, if I'm a youth and we have youth groups, we need to push for the youth agenda, so that even if it will be about the formation of the government, the structure, there should be somewhere whereby we are speaking about the youth. We've seen women have brought in the DG, a women DG wherever there is a male governor. They already have the 47 county representatives. But you look at the entire document, the current document and even the proposed BBI, in most cases you don't see anyone speaking about the youth. And yet the youth forms the bigger part of this nation. We are the voters. So I challenge all youth, even as we are talking about the referendum, let us sneak in our agenda so that in as much as they speak about the structure of the government, which does not really concern us, let us have something about youth that is really catching our ideas and bringing youth now to leadership.
Let's hear from Mr. Orogo. He seems to be behind these referendum bills.
First of all, I think that's going back to what I talked about before. Is it the referendum? Has it been propagated by the political class minus the feeling of the people? Because I haven't seen, where majority of Kenyans have shown that they promulgated the idea of having a constitution discourse right now. But being the case, the framers of the constitution, I agree that framed it in preempting or presuming that once the constitution of Kenya is going to implement it through the spirit of the latter, then it would avoid a lot of power wrangling and a lot of one or two issues here and there. It is seeming that is not ideally happening, and therefore should anybody bring forth a discussion about any discourse to change the constitution, then any constitution change or any constitution talk that talks about the structure of executive, the term limit for a president, the national values and principles of governance and devolution, that definitely has to go through a referendum, because that is what the constitution say. And as we speak, there's a discussion about all of Kenya suffering an injustice of having an executive president with an executive power. And that means that all powers are centralized through one source. And therefore, to avoid a lot of backlash after the election, there is a need to even change the structure of the parliament. That means that thinking about bicameral parliament and having majority and minority. So all these discussions definitely goes through a people-centered process, and that is a referendum. So my presumption moving forward is the fact that the drumbeats about referendum, as you said, is the discussion about introducing an executive prime minister. That is going to take shape, definitely. And I can tell you that is a fact it's going to take shape. The discussion about having a regional government as opposed or parallel to the devolved system of government. You read about the regional blocks, forming around coalescing, or even introduction of provinces as we retain the devolved system of government. Those are questions that we are going to see. And the whole discussion whether is the Senate the majority house or is the senior upper house or the National Assembly. So I think these are issues that once there is a real process now, a concrete process about referendum, then these are questions that are going to be prompted. And once again, I like to really support what brother talked about. Our undoing in the referendum process has been the hijacking of a whole debate and being directed by the political class. And I think the issue about interest groups like young people, women, people living with disability, must always take preeminence about the discussion of a constitutional amendment. Because the political class definitely will push a broad-based idea to fulfill the individual parties and their party leaders and their minority leaders, but subjugate the role of the interest groups, which should be taken to consideration. So that means that if, in case, we are going to reach a level where now we have a discussion about framing of the questions before we go to voting it, then the neutral civil society organizations, interest groups must deliberately take the process of discussion what is called a civic education by that time in reference to referendum to engage the public, because the idea of if the other part, the person read, we have also read, all of us. You know, if Raila reads it, then there's no reason of reading it. If Nyong'o approves it, then if Orengo, if Kindiki, I think this is our undoing about the country. Then we are not able to make an informed choice, and then we'll come back again to say, oh, by then we missed an opportunity. We want another referendum.
Another. That's why
it's a vicious cycle.
We will come into something there
Yes.
now. Mr. Sasi and Mr. Dan. There is this part, Macharia Munene, who is a lecturer at some university and a political commentator, 2 days ago talked of this thing is being threatened by time. He talked of an existing law that says a referendum has to be held 2 years before a general election. And if that is the case, then it has to be held before August this year. What is your take on Munene's assertions?
If we go by the constitution, Mr. Munene is right. But we understand the discussion around referendum is normally propagated by the politicians. And the politicians carry the day. It is very easy for them to formulate a bill and take it to parliament and change that part of it, of the constitution. I'm not really sure what entails to change it, but I know the August date cannot be an hindrance for them to change the constitution. They can easily change that part that hinders them to have a referendum past August. But the timings for me are not a problem. We still have seen the proposal that we can have a referendum concurrently with the general elections. I don't know whether that is captured in our constitution, but if that discussion is happening, then it means there's a leeway in the constitution that allows we can have a referendum, we can introduce a sixth question to the general elections and have a referendum. If not, then I peg it on the parliament. They'll have a bill and change on that rule, that law that says we need a referendum 2 years to the general election and allow it to come even few months to the general election, or allow it to run concurrently with the general election. But again, we look at the BBI. I'm really not sure whether our politicians will allow a referendum to run together with the general elections, because the discussion around the BBI or the change of the constitution, it is purely focused on the 2022 elections. If you are saying we are going to introduce an executive prime minister, we are going to change the structure of government, then how do we allow a referendum to run same time the general election, yet we want to change the factors that are going to happen around the general election? So definitely we are going to have a referendum before the general election, and the timing, the 2-year timing, to me is not a hindrance, because it can be changed by the same parliament that is propagating for the same constitution change. Yes.
As we come to our conclusion tonight, we want really to study this issue briefly. Who stands to gain when the referendum is held, and who stands to lose?
Yeah, like you know, it's a question that you're putting like between the egg and the chicken, which one comes. But of course, I think it's a contested approach. I would like to give my input and then really come to that question. Let me tell you, in the political conquest, you know, when you want to redefine morality, the political morality, in the context of what you have, then you have to make it appear to be reflecting on the context you are. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say right now, most of Kenyans would not buy into the idea of a referendum. But the state, all measures that you're seeing right now, would definitely whip the emotions of Kenyans to accept that there's a need for a referendum. And I'm telling you, this is what you're seeing even within the changes, even in the National Assembly. Because, and you said this is our opinion. My opinion about it, not really yours, but my opinion. My opinion about what is taking place is for us to see a situation where the state would want, or the government, let me talk about sections of Jubilee government and ODM, would want the idea of a referendum to take place without hindrance. It has to be discussed in the National Assembly and in the Senate. But the king have realized that, you know, some of the disloyal soldiers might not really buy into this idea. So important of making necessary for for it to be discussed. Now, this is what I would really propose, that, you know, ideally for us, it is in the spirit of the communique that was made in the BBI. All of us know that each and every election is always turmoil. All of us know about this, right? That the winner takes it all is not better for this country. You know, there needs to be a revised version. There is accommodative in definition of a democracy. While the winner celebrates, the loser accept that as a legitimate outcome.
With an assurance
With
that
a-
life
yes.
will not be too harsh,
Will not be
both
too
to
harsh.
them
Yes,
and
both-
their supporters.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that he needs to accept that as a legitimate process. But in this country, that has not been happening. So for me, I propose a level where the winner of a referendum is Kenyans by themselves, who must understand that, one, the timing reflects that we need to change so that in 2027, we do not fall into the vagaries of a divided nation. The loser as well must understand the necessity for us to have a country that is devoid of political turmoil after the elections.
Mr. Sasia,
Who stands to gain and who stands to lose, to me, is a quagmire riddle, which can only be cracked by the question that will be proposed. You see, like, I go back to 2010 document. You realize that those who thought that were going to gain eventually came to lose. And those who thought that this document was against them won. I want such a scenario, whereby those who really think are going to gain by the constitution, the referendum going through, will eventually come to realize that the document was not really centered on them, but it was centered on the people and even those who opposed it. So for this one,
so win-win situation.
yes, for this one, I look at it and think, until we see the question, until we see the final document, is when now we realize who stands to gain and who stands to lose. And the competition in the referendum is between us and them. Us to mean the voter, and them the leader, the politicians. Because most of the time, they'll go for a document that favors them. Then sneak in something that is so popular, that looks so popular to the voter. That is what will be hidden, and that will be the part that will be shown to the voter. But the real inside, you realize it is the politician benefiting. So for me, I want a document that when it goes through and voted in 2022, I stay safe, peacefully, and I continue to live a normal life. Life will not stop. There will be no wars and skirmishes and post-election violences and those things that will disrupt all the normals. I want a document that when it goes through, I win, they win. They win in having the position that they'll sneak in. I win by having peace after voting. That is what I'm looking at.
Many thanks, gentlemen. Now, from this analysis that we've had, it's becoming evident that this thing, chances are higher that it will happen. Now, you've spoken about the loopholes that are within the citizens, the politicians. We had a referendum in the year 2005, you remember, during the Kibaki regime, which
Orange
the state
referendum.
lost. So members of the state were against it. The Raila crew, you remember.
Yes.
We came to 2010, the state had its way, and that's the constitution that we are using right now. We are likely to have another one in between here up to 2022, as some of you have suggested that let's have it alongside the general election. They say one man can change the whole world. We want you to make your final submissions to Kenyans and even to those politicians. That I as Orogo, I as Sasia, this is what I'm going to do, and hope that you can also do it in these lines so that all of us can have this referendum not being turned into another battlefield to leave the country worse or worse than it found it. You are parting shots, gentlemen, beginning with Orogo.
Well, I think mine is to ask Kenyans, you know, that any constitution making process is a process that is so much vigorous and, you know, inclusive and involving. It is important for Kenyans to learn from the mistakes that we did last time in 2005 and in 2009 and 2010, I mean, that time. Then what happened is the fact that the discussion was hijacked by political class and it was devoid of people's participation. Suppose we are going for a constitutional change through a referendum. I think Kenyans is their prerogative to take into consideration, look through, and comb through anything that concerns them, that which is important for them, and that which is life-changing for them. And I think as an individual, I think my take is to just give Kenyans what they really need to listen, and ideally, because the problem with the voter has always been the win for a politician. Mine is to make sure that, Constitution is a document that is progressive, that safeguards the people's interest, and changes people's lives if it's taken seriously.
Many thanks, Orogo. Mr. Sasha.
Thank you. Mine is to specifically address the youth that we have today, we have tomorrow after today, that we need to concentrate on matters that affect us. That most of the time we've seen constitutional changes in this country, the youth have lost it. We've not had a youth agenda in the constitution. And after referendum discourse, we come and regret. We come and say we are still unemployed. We come and tell people we are not in the leadership of this country. So my call to the youth is, we are the most educated. We are the biggest chunk of voters. Let us rethink our approach. Let us not vote yes or no. Let us go to those committees, give presentations. Let us give our ideas. Let us sneak our positions into the referendum, such that after the referendum, we have something to celebrate. As they celebrate, let us also celebrate. We should not be concocted into believing that it is a person A versus person B competition. It is a constitutional referendum is for us. And I talk about youth because we are the most affected. We always told youth are the leaders of tomorrow, but I always believe that tomorrow is today. So let us come up with ideas. Before that document comes out, let us sneak in our ideas. I want us to copy the women, what the women have done. We saw them sneak in the 2010 constitution, the 47 women representatives. We've seen in the BBI, they've come up with where there is a man governor, there is a woman deputy governor. That is a good thing. Let us also youth come up with a way that we can say where there is an old man governor, then there is a youth deputy or something of that sort. Let us sneak our position in the document, and so that after the political class have finished the discourse and are celebrating their win, we can also celebrate our win, that we are well represented and a part of our problem, not all, but part of our problems have been solved. Thank you.
Many thanks, gentlemen. It's been a wonderful and an informed debate tonight. We've looked into the referendum, the two referendum bills that have been gazetted by the Kenya Gazette. It is awaiting approval, and then the next stage, which we will inform you on PowerBrief and other platforms. We thank you for your overwhelming responses on this show. Till next time, from me, Cornelius Omuse, I wish you a good night.